A 5-year-old girl holds out an open palm. A goat walks straight into it, no hesitation, no fear. It leans its head into her hand like it's known her its whole life. 20 feet away, behind a chain link fence, a wolf watches the exact same girl. Same open hand, same gentle voice. And the wolf does not move an inch closer. Here's what should terrify you about that moment. The wolf isn't afraid of her. The wolf is calculating her. What if the difference between pet and predator was never about size or teeth or strength? What if it was written into an animal's blood before it ever took its first breath? What if humans didn't actually choose which animals to tame at all? And what if the ones we couldn't tame were trying to tell us something we still haven't fully understood? Because right now, in a frozen research facility in Siberia, there are foxes with floppy ears and curly tails that were never bred to look that way. Nobody wanted floppy ears. Nobody asked for curly tails. Scientists were only trying to breed for one thing: calm. And what happened next shouldn't have been possible. 10,000 years ago in the Zagros Mountains of what is now Iran, someone did something no human being had ever attempted. They didn't kill a wild goat for its meat and move on. They let one live. Archaeologist Melinda Zeter spent years digging through ancient goat bones from that exact region, looking for a pattern buried in the fragments. And she found one. Herders weren't killing goats at random. They were keeping young females alive, killing young males earlier, shaping an entire species without a single written plan. But the goats had to agree to this, and somehow they did. No leash existed strong enough to hold a wild goat that didn't want to stay. No fence tall enough. The only thing keeping them close was tolerance. And generation after generation, the calmest goats stayed near the food, the water, the herd. The nervous ones fled into the mountains and vanished from history completely. Something invisible was being selected for. Not size, not strength, something far stranger. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev decided to compress 10,000 years of that mountain slope into a single human lifetime, inside a laboratory. He chose silver foxes, an animal that had never once been domesticated in human history. His method was almost insultingly simple. Each generation breed only the calmest foxes, the ones that didn't flinch, didn't snap, didn't run when a person approached. That's it. No training, no taming. Just keep the calm ones. Repeat. By generation 10, something happened that no one on Belyaev's team predicted and no one could fully explain. The foxes didn't just act tamer. They started looking like an entirely different animal. Ears went floppy, tails curled, white patches bloomed across their fur, skulls shortened, hormone levels shifted, bodies rearranged themselves in ways nobody had bred for on purpose. He had only selected for behavior, and an entire skeleton answered back. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. That exact cluster, floppy ears, patchy coats, shortened snouts, calmer temperament, all arriving together, uninvited, now has a name: domestication syndrome. And it doesn't just appear in Belyaev's foxes. It's in dogs, pigs, cows, goats. Nearly every animal humans have ever tamed carries fragments of the same hidden signature, which means every dog curled up on a couch tonight is, in some small biological way, running the same unfinished experiment Belyaev started in the snow 60 years ago. But if calmness alone can rewire a skeleton in 10 generations, why hasn't it happened to lions? To wolves that have scavenged human camps for thousands of years without turning into golden retrievers? Some of them tried. Biologist Raymond Coppinger argued dogs weren't tamed the way we like to imagine, a human reaching into a forest and stealing a wolf pup. He believed it happened in reverse. Bolder wolves crept toward the trash heaps outside ancient human camps, willing to risk exposure for the free meal. The nervous wolves stayed hidden in the trees, the calm ones stayed by the fire. Same story as the goats, same story as the foxes. Proximity, tolerance, generations, transformation. So why do we have chihuahuas asleep in handbags and not house-trained lions? The obvious answer arrives fast, and it sounds airtight: economics. A pride of lions needs miles of hunting ground and enormous amounts of meat just to survive one season. You cannot pen that. You cannot scale it. Goats eat grass, Yankel, something humans could grow, store, and control. The math collapses before the psychology ever gets a chance. Except that answer doesn't survive survive contact with history, humans have kept captive lions, wolves, even tigers for centuries, fed, sheltered, completely safe from starvation. Diet wasn't always the wall. Something quieter was standing in the way the entire time. Behavioral ecologist Brian Hare calls it self-domestication, the theory that some species are born carrying a built-in tolerance for stress and strangers, wired into them long before any human ever got involved. Bonobos have it. Dogs have it. And goats and sheep, herd animals living in tight social groups under strict hierarchies, arrive preloaded with exactly the psychology domestication requires. Comfort with crowding, a habit of following a leader, a low baseline fear of things that aren't obviously trying to kill them. Predators evolved the opposite wiring, on purpose. A wolf that isn't suspicious dies before it reproduces. A lion cub that wanders toward an unfamiliar smell doesn't live to become an adult. Their entire nervous system is built around vigilance, the precise opposite of the trait Belyaev was quietly breeding for in that Siberian lab. So the wall between goat and lion was never about muscle, or fang, or claw. It was about what kind of brain each animal needed just to survive the world it was born into. Now, something even stranger happens. Not every predator refused this path. Genetic research led by evolutionary biologist Carlos Driscoll traced every house cat on Earth back to a single wild ancestor, Felis silvestris labica, in the Fertile Crescent, roughly 10,000 years ago. But nobody bred cats the way goats and dogs were bred. Grain stores attracted rodents. Rodents attracted wildcats. And the boldest, calmest cats, the ones willing to tolerate a noisy, crowded human settlement, simply stayed, ate well, and passed that boldness on. Cats domesticated themselves, on their own timeline, by their own rules, which means the line between tameable and untamable was never a wall at all. It was a threshold, and some predators happened to be born close enough to cross it, if the reward was worth the risk. That single fact quietly destroys the comfortable story that predators simply can't be tamed. Some can, most won't. And the difference between those two outcomes might come down to something as fragile as how much fear a single newborn animal carries in its blood before its eyes even open. There's a case that makes this almost unbearable to sit with. In the 1970s, researchers attempted something no one had tried at this scale. Raising wolf pups from birth, fed by hand, sleeping beside humans, treated in every way like puppies. For weeks it seemed to be working. The pups played, they nuzzled, they followed. Then, as they matured, something in them switched on. Not through cruelty, not through any failure of love. Ancient instinct simply activated on schedule. Territorial behavior, unpredictable aggression, a wariness that no amount of affection could dissolve. Wolves raised by hand from birth, loved every single day, could not fully unlearn 10 million years of what their species needed to survive. Now, picture a goat kid, born in a pen, walking toward a stranger's hand in its first week of life without a flicker of hesitation. Same warmth, same food, same daily contact with humans, wildly, permanently different inheritance. Which leads to the question this entire mystery has been circling since the very first frame. How much of who we are, human or animal, was ever actually chosen? And how much was decided long before we were born? In the blind machinery of selection, working silently across thousands of generations, we will never witness. Because here's the part that reaches past goats, past wolves, past every fence and leash in this story. Some researchers studying Belyaev's fox lineage have found something unsettling. The biological pathway underlying tameness in foxes overlaps with genes connected to sociability and reduced aggression in humans, which means the same force that turned a wild mountain goat into a farm animal, that turned a scavenging wolf into a dog asleep at the foot of a bed, may have quietly shaped something in us too, a species remarkably tolerant of strangers. Remarkably able to live packed into enormous, cooperative cities compared to every extinct relative we ever had. So ask it again, but slower this time. Did humans domesticate goats? Or did something older than agriculture itself, some ancient filter that rewards calm over ferocity, tolerance over suspicion, quietly domesticate all of us at once? Goats, dogs, cats, humans. Each species arriving at gentleness by a completely different road, yet somehow arriving at the exact same place. The fox in Belyaev's lab never met a wolf. The goat in the Zagros Mountains never met a fox. And yet the same invisible rule reached into both of their bloodlines and rewired them from the inside, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart. Maybe the real question was never why we can't tame a lion. Maybe it's this: what invisible line decides which animals and which people lean toward an open hand, and which ones, no matter how gently it, take one step back